Okay, great. I believe we are now live.
All right.
Cool. So,
Hey,
great,
hey.
great to have you here, Mitchie and Tim. We've literally received over 146 questions, so we certainly can't answer them all.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, people are excited, and I think that's absolutely brilliant.
I just want to make sure that we actually do this regularly and kind of bite off a bit at a time and keep it going. That way, we don't have to try and answer absolutely everything in this AMA, but it can become more of a regular thing.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think I don't know. Maybe we do this every, I don't know, what, 4 or 6 weeks or something like that. I don't know, and then
Yeah.
we can get through all the questions that way.
Well, they'll keep coming.
Yeah, seeing as
But yeah.
we've received 146 questions to the Dogecoin Discord server, we obviously need to narrow them a little bit. So I've got 6 decent questions here that I think will keep us talking for an hour or so. We can always add more, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I know we're watching in the chat too for anything good and pertinent that we can jump on. So
Cool. Right. You ready?
hold
Yeah,
on.
hit it.
They're saying the stream's frozen. They're saying the
Oh,
stream is frozen.
sorry. How's that?
Are we back?
I think we're back.
Are we back?
I think we're back.
I'm
Yep.
waiting for a verification. Okay. Can somebody let us know if we're still here? Okay.
I think
Anyways, first question: if we're actually live? Okay, we're back. Okay. Um,
so, yeah.
so go ahead.
Technology. It turns out if you click the wrong window,
Yeah.
it freezes everything. So, first question from the username Version, and they ask quite simply, mind you, what is libdogecoin?
Oh yeah, the easy question first, right? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know, Tim, if you want to start with that.
Yeah, I can.
You want to
I
read it?
can. Yeah, sure, no worries. I mean, basically, libdogecoin. The basic idea of it is that it's like a low-level C library that's going to provide the fundamentals of Dogecoin as sort of fundamental building blocks, so that people can jump in and play with that. So you don't need to necessarily know the lowest level crypto functionality that comprises Dogecoin. You can get in any sort of language, because the idea is that we're going to put some sort of wrappers around this. So you might see wrappers in, say, Python or Node.js or Golang or whatever. So that you can jump in and you can play around and you can build a wallet, you can build a node, or you can build something else, I don't know, point of sale system or anything. I think that's really important because we need a lot more people in Dogecoin developing, and I think that the current C++ implementation, while it's great and while it's served us well for a long time, it's a high barrier to entry for a lot of people. You certainly have a lot of really talented developers out there in higher level languages, and if we can make those building blocks available to them, we're really going to see a huge spike in the number of people contributing to the broader Dogecoin ecosystem. I think that's going to be better for Doge and better for everyone.
Right. It won't have to be. You won't have to be a blockchain expert in order to write a Dogecoin app and bring in Dogecoin functionality. You should be able to use what's already in your wheelhouse and add Dogecoin functionality to whatever app you can think up. And one of the focuses we're having on it is a low amount of dependencies, as little as possible as far as dependencies go, and prerequisites. So, people aren't going to have to go through a lengthy build process. They're just going to be able to download the library and access the functions. That's the idea, at least that's the goal.
I mean, I think also that's really useful because one of the big things I see with so many libraries is they have 200 dependencies that come in, and suddenly your risk profile also goes up. Cough, log for Jake on cough. Obviously, obviously not a problem with Java in this case, but it is one of these things that the more stuff you pull in, the more you go, oh, this dependency we had that we thought was entirely safe is now on fire.
Yeah, I think talking about dependencies, maybe Misha, you can talk to this as well, is the move to C from C++, we think is going to simplify those dependencies a lot. Like not
Yes.
using Boost, make it more accessible for people who do want to dive into that library and understand it.
Right. When I see people building either from depends or building just from the native environment and downloading packages and using package managers to build core, there are some stumbling blocks that are always repeats, and that's BDB and Boost, and a few others. But if we can not lean on those, which I know Boost is actually meant to be something that makes development easier. I kind of disagree that that's fulfilled its purpose. If you can just build the thing without it having to set up a massive environment, I think that'll go a long way. So.
Cool. I'm excited to see more of that, and I think like a lot of the basic principles, while they're out there, that they can be very hard to get to, and hopefully an encapsulated library will also let people see more of what's going on. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if the functions are really simplified, and which we hope they will be, that'll be very straightforward. Like, okay, I'm generating an HD address, and I'm getting the private key for it, and now I have to store it. And I'm forming a raw transaction, stuff like that. They'll be able to see the process in almost like a block diagram sort of level, without having to get into the weeds of exactly how that sausage is made under the hood, but they'll still get the basic flow of how a Dogecoin transaction works. And I think that that's a good way for people to start, and then they can advance from there. So, and we just want to say that as of this week, we have actually begun implementing functions for libdogecoin. So it is not vaporware at this point. It actually has begun code. So
is that? I mean, should we tweet that out later, just and go, hey, for anyone who's curious, it's over here.
Sure. So this would put Bloozer on the spot a little bit.
Okay, let's not.
So I want to check with him, because he's been doing most of the work on it, but it's been very good, and he's been. I just want to kind of give a shout out to him that he's really been doing very good on starting that. So I'll ask him if he thinks he can take the heat and attention. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I think it's worth also talking about the documentation angle of that. And so, one of the things that I experienced coming into the Dogecoin project, trying to understand how it fit together, is the lack of documentation. The idea that people will say, "Oh, read the Bitcoin documentation, but it's different." Where are those differences documented? Oh, well, they're not really, but we'll tell you about them when you hit the snags. That's
that's my that's in Ross's head look, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yes.
We need to avoid that bust factor. So getting that out on paper is going to be really important. And so part of the project of building libdogecoin is that as we go, documenting that in some sort of, we called it the Dogecoin standard, but it's really just documentation. How does Dogecoin function? If I'm a new developer, I don't want to have to go and read the Bitcoin documentation and then, read Patrick's head, Ross's head, Mishi's head. It should be more accessible than that.
Basically, I would say as putting down on paper how the reference implementation works. How core works even, because right now core is the documentation, and we'd like to actually make it documents. If that makes sense. So.
Okay, cool. I think we're going to head around libdogecoin, and for a somewhat lighter question, because that was very, very technical. And I say this jokingly, Bagged Taco has said that being a dev can be stressful. And Bagged Taco wants to say, what ways have you found to manage the stress, and what tips we can give others who find themselves in similar situations?
Okay, well, this is heavy. And first, I just want to say, sheesh taco. He knows what I'm talking about. And stress as a dev, I mean, because this is a community project, we have to interact a lot with the community. And there are a lot of different opinions out there and different takes that people have on. Yeah, I know this is supposed to be a lighter question, but it's actually heavier in a lot of ways. So we're kind of doing community interface as well as development. We're not just kind of sitting in a cube and coding. I know some rather would, but when you have community input, you have to wrestle with a lot of different opinions. That's come up recently on things like the method of validation, proof of work versus proof of stake. And I think that the best thing to do is understand that people who interact with you as an open source developer where you're visible. The best thing to do is understand that people are coming from different places. And it's not just that they don't understand when they say, well, a decision you're making to try and develop X, Y, or Z is wrong and offensive, but realize that they came from a different background and they have a different set of circumstances as to why they may be complaining to you. Because they see you as a decision maker, even though I don't necessarily agree that as developers we are or should be final decision makers. We do put stuff out there, but we don't do edicts. We don't say this is how it's going to be. That's decided through consensus, and that's something that a lot of people need to wrap their head around, how consensus works. But I would say when somebody is angry, it's usually because they are nervous about something, and try to understand their background as to where they're coming from and why they might be nervous about a change or announcement you may be making. I don't know if that helps any.
I mean,
or others.
I think it's really good on community management, Mitchy. But I mean, I think, for example, what do you do for downtime?
What do I do for downtime?
Yeah.
I didn't know I had downtime. I slept like 3 hours last night, but and that wasn't based on writing code. But there's just a lot to manage in Dogecoin right now. There's a lot of moving parts. Downtime. I mean, if you really want the light stuff, I like to mess with kind of hardcore science stuff, and I like to fly drones and do physics and radio experiments. That won't work for other people.
Hey, it's all good to have hobbies. Tim, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I find getting away from my computer is really important for me. So, spending my life in tech, living and breathing that, having something that's just not tech altogether. Like a couple of years ago, I was trying to build a forge and trying to get in blacksmithing. Turns out it's really expensive to buy an anvil because not many people make anvils anymore. So I haven't achieved that goal yet. But those sorts of things, during the start of the pandemic, we went and bought 8 chickens, and now I'm a chicken farmer. The
reason I'm actually addressing you is Jens made a point that we probably should address each other by name more, because people coming in late don't know who we are and we didn't do an introduction. It's our first AMA. We're not going to do it.
True.
But I'm Michi, and I'm addressing Tim right now, and the fellow in the top hat is Ross Nickel.
Hello.
But Tim, I'm just saying that, when you talk about becoming a blacksmith and raising chickens, I automatically go to some kind of, and it may be typical and tropey, but I automatically go to some kind of Mad Max vision in my head. You like living in
bolting
in
lasers
the bush
onto my chickens.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, or machine guns, or so, I don't know. Sure. So, yeah.
Excellent, we've gone mad science. This is good. I was going to say, you're in Australia. It's the right place for Mad Max, so that's positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so,
I'm not
I
into
mean,
mad science. I'm into frustrated science. So.
Yeah. Anyway, just to answer the question, other people who find themselves in a stressful dev situation, just get away from the keyboard for a while. I think it's really important to keep things in balance, and it makes you a better developer. I think that one of the things people think that developing is all a science, and I tend to come from the craft point of view as well to that, and part of that is having experience in different areas actually lifts your game as a developer. So I think that's important too.
Well, it's interesting because people talk about left and right brain stuff. I'm actually an artist too, and I think that there is a lot of art to solving the problems in development. And a lot of times, it's important to say about getting away, most of the solutions to engineering problems that I've had have come to me when I was doing something else. When I've taken a break, while I'm walking somewhere, then it'll come to you. Sitting there and drilling on a problem is usually not the best way to solve it.
I think it's very.
Usually,
I think it's very classic, shower thought that you can be banging your head against a problem,
right,
and having an environment that forces
right.
you not to be looking at a screen. Please don't electrocute yourself. Can actually be really good.
Well, yeah, I end up in the doing the laptop and bathtub thing a lot. So yeah, I
True,
haven't
but
killed myself yet.
shower
Um,
is different.
right, yeah, that would be a little bit more dangerous.
I was gonna say, yeah, Mitch is gonna come up
Um,
with a waterproof tablet. It's gonna be a thing.
yeah, or just in a Ziploc bag and go with that. I don't know. Um, so I guess what we wanted to talk about next, and I know Ross, you were supposed to lead into it, but the radio and Starlink stuff, and that's come up recently. And I don't want to monopolize this either because I've been talking a lot, but
Well, we should
I
give
suppose.
credit to the question. This is from Doge Whisperer, asks about Radio
Oh,
Starlink
okay,
specifically. Yeah, there's a question here. Doge Whisperer
okay,
asks
yeah.
specifically about the Radio and Starlink project that you're working on, Michi. They'd like to know how affordable the hardware would be, and what the requirements would be to transact.
So for end users, I am aiming for in the neighborhood of $30. Um, and I think it's possible. You know, not really counting in the current crazy supply chain problem we're having now with chips and anything that plugs in. But if we ever enter the real world again, that's at very least under $100. And that was at current sourcing prices, where you would have an end user node attaching to a LoRaWAN, and not only a LoRaWAN, but I mean that would be the primary way. But there's other ways to attach to the radio overlay network, and that's the primary idea of it. Is that right now crypto depends on the internet, just people having at least some form of broadband access. And that is a very Western notion. It's a very middle class sort of notion. I don't want to get insulting there, but there are not rural areas and remote areas and poor areas that really can run a node very easily. Um,
And that's really important if
and
we're trying to be the people's crypto, isn't it?
yeah,
I mean,
correct. Yes. So, and what's the difficulty of that? Well, it's the expense for one, but it's also getting infrastructure out there. There are places where fiber doesn't go.
Mm.
There are places where wires don't go,
Mm.
and people tend to forget, about how in the 1920s we were sending telegraph signals across the world without wires, and it would make some sense to revisit that. So the Dogecoin network doesn't have to reside only on the internet. It can reside on any network where the nodes can communicate with each other, and mesh networking such as LoRaWAN and what I call backhauls, well, whatever everybody calls backhauls, to an infrastructureless node is a way to get around this. So you would have a sort of it's still distributed, but you'd have a major Starlink uplink, okay, that doesn't have any other connections, doesn't have Comcast or cable or DSL or anything like that. It's talking to each other, Starlink to Starlink. Not Starlink to Internet to Starlink, but Starlink to Starlink, or any other satellite. I know there's some other ones coming online. Right now I'm doing it with Starlink, so it doesn't branded or anything like that, and I haven't gotten any consideration or pay from SpaceX. I know that we all have fun with Elon, but they're the ones who could get me the hardware the fastest. That's why it happened. But the idea is that and I want to be cautious of using this term, central nodes, which would more be the major nodes, would be Earth station to Earth station, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So they would communicate over satellite purely without having any need for any other internet infrastructure. So it's not going through access points or landlines or trunks or anything like that. And then from there, to reach remote, say, villages, that would be an HF backhaul. HF being high frequency, which is actually a misnomer. It's actually low frequency, but that name was established in the 40s or so it was high then. But basically in the shortwave band would be the backhaul to these central satellite stations. And then in these villages and even, towns and between cities could be the LoRaWAN or mesh structure. Again, it doesn't have to be LoRaWAN, that's just what I'm going to be doing to do the proof of concept. And so there would be a backhaul to these primary nodes, and the internet could go down, trees could fall, it wouldn't matter because this is infrastructureless. You could have somebody with a car battery, a single board computer, and a piece of wire for an antenna, and you'd be good to go to get on and transact Dogecoin.
That's really exciting.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
This is real.
Sorry, I also wanted to say, actually, because you were talking about internet connections in rural areas. Honestly, bits of the UK aren't great either, even in cities. Like, it's actually amazing.
There's actually no reason why they couldn't be used in cities too, and for just people who can't afford the city broadband. There wouldn't be with LoRaWAN. It's basically open source networking and community networking. You don't have to pay for it. You just connect. So I really think that is something that we need to be looking at.
This is really interesting to me. Not many people would know, but my last job, I was working in a startup that was using LoRaWAN to build mesh networks for high-rise construction. So we were triangulating using Bluetooth, and then using that via LoRaWAN to track people and materials in a high-rise construction setting. So I do know a little bit about the tech behind that, and it is really impressive tech because my understanding is that many cities around the world are building LoRaWAN mesh networks right now. Yes. If you are within a CBD radius or something like that, you can just jump on. Like you said, it's free, but you can deploy these all over the world, and I think the technology is super exciting because it's sort of low power. I've heard that people are getting ranges 4 or 5 kilometers or whatever, maybe more than
I've
that.
seen more than that. Yeah.
And I was reading Hacker News a couple of weeks ago, and there was a item there that said someone had bounced a LoRaWAN signal off the moon. So
yep. Absolutely possible. Yeah, and keep in mind that when we talk about running a LoRaWAN node and a Dogecoin LoRaWAN node, we're talking about like hanging a Raspberry Pi off of a tree with a solar panel that you got secondhand. That's the level of commitment. That's the level of investment that people are going to require. It's not going to be difficult. It's not going to be a big upfront investment. And I just wanted to add, since I know that there's some tension around this, me working on this, none of the Dogecoin tip jar funds are going to this. This right now is all I'm funding it all myself. I'd like to see some income because it's going slower than I'd like. I'm trying to get some of it up by spring. And do the first transaction in the spring, but because I am funding it myself, it's kind of a piece at a time. And then I have the Starlink section set up, and I'm working on the HF backhaul now. So I just wanted to put that out there that this is not getting funded by any pooled funds or anything like that.
Yeah, we're not using the foundation funds to pay for equipment, but potentially
No.
that's a question. I guess we'll just do a quick operational note. Just to say, I can't read questions. That's what happened when the stream froze earlier, was if I look at the questions, then this window freezes. So everyone else asking questions, I can't see them. To the moderators, please put them in the chat. I can see.
The other thing is, going back to the original, the start of this conversation, we had 146 questions. We're going to be going through those periodically. We're going to have more than one AMA, so we're going to do this regularly. So if your question doesn't get answered, we'll be adding it to the list, and it will eventually. So
yeah. Cool.
Okay, where are we next?
Daniel asks us, what do we think is the reason many wallets don't implement the new low fee, and what can the community do to help?
And here I go talking again. I think it's because of inertia and a little bit of fear. So in Bitcoin, if you don't keep track of the fee market and pay a good enough fee, same with Ethereum, and if you don't keep track of gas fees, you have the real chance of a transaction just not going through. And it is assumed that Dogecoin has a fee market, and therefore that the fee paid is extremely important. Mm-hmm. At this point, it really isn't. So I think it just people have to see the low fee transactions go through. I think most of the time, if you pay like 1 or 2 doses, overkill, absolutely at this point. Mm-hmm. So I think it is mostly just cold feet and inertia, and also just kind of how fees work on other chains.
Yeah, I mean, I also wonder if sometimes it's exchanges, because I think some of the exchanges have a withdrawal fee to discourage people moving funds. Like I think, like you and I, when someone says wallet, we think of things that are only used to hold money. But I think some people think of the exchanges also as wallets, and I think that's potentially some of the confusion.
I think a lot of people also mistake the exchange fees for Dogecoin fees, and it's like, oh well, this exchange charges me the equivalent of $50 to move 1,000 Doge. That's not the network fee. That's nothing to do with the Dogecoin network. That's an arbitrary fee that they put on there. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, when you're transmitting from core to core, you don't have to take that into account.
Yeah. And I think there's a couple that have upgraded. I know Ledger has. I think Exodus did. Is that right?
They did a little bit. They're better than they were.
Okay.
They're kind of dipping their toe in the water and lowering it. They still got a ways to go, and I think Atomic is still high.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of voting with your feet essentially. Like if an exchange is charging a lot, try to look for alternatives. I know in some countries there are very few. But I think people do get stuck on specific exchanges, and I'm not going to name them. But look around, see what the options are, see what's more competitive. Would be my advice. Like a lot of them will list a fee schedule.
Okay. And I guess one thing we do want to do is I have been in talks with some of these groups like Atomic, and I intend to continue that. Mm-hmm. And once we have a lot of evidence to show them, look, low fees work, I'm going to reapproach groups like Atomic Wallet and stuff like that and make sure that they implement low fees.
Mm-hmm. So
encouraging.
Shall we move to the next question? Is that okay? Cool. So I've read ahead a little bit, which is where the laughter came from there. So great question here from someone you may or may not have heard of, and I say this in jest. I've lost Tim. Oh, good. Okay, we'll continue without Tim. I hope that's okay. Someone called Misha Bor, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, asked us to consider the following. Let's imagine a hypothetical cannoli shop serving customers delicious hot cups of coffee alongside the delicious pastry, at the rhythm of 15 to 20 customers per hour. What can we do to make it as easy as possible that can only stop to accept payments via Dogecoin? Are there point-of-sale apps you recommend or they could use? Will there be in the future? Tim, I'm going to send that one to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just having a couple of technical difficulties. Am I coming through all right?
You are now.
Okay, great. Um, yeah, this is a really important question. I think, in my opinion, who wins point of sale wins the who's going to dominate the currency market, I guess. If Dogecoin is going to be the currency of the people going forward, we need to be at the point of sale because that's where the mind share is. Right now, if I go and tap with my card, I'm using Visa or MasterCard or something like that. That's I don't necessarily think in my mind, oh well, and that's using Australian dollars because I'm Australian. It's like, okay, I'm tapping, and I guess there are new banks coming up. I won't name them, but there are banks coming out now where they're giving you a card. You can tap, and it doesn't matter whether your funds are in Bitcoin or in USD or euros or whatever it is. It's just going to work. And now the thing there is that over time, whatever it is that you're tapping with, whatever it is that owns that point of sale process, that's where the mind share is. They become, in the minds of the people who are using it, like that is how you're paying. And so you're not thinking, oh, I'm spending Dogecoin or I'm spending Bitcoin or I'm spending US dollars. You're just like, I'm tapping with, whatever the name of the service is. And I think that is certainly a risk where those service providers are hoping in the future that a lot of these currencies that they're offering will unify, perhaps to one that they're providing, because that's the thing when you provide the whole service, you can then start to take away the options behind the scenes when you gain market share. And so I think from a Dogecoin point of view, it's really important that Dogecoin does have a point of sale, presence. And really that's part of what we were trying to achieve, whether you've seen the Dogecoin Foundation trail map with the Giga Wallet service and the Doge Keyring SDK, which that's not, the second part of that's not described very well yet, but essentially what we're saying is we would like to use libdogecoin, as we've described earlier, these building blocks, to then go and build point of sale service that you can just deploy into your platform, that's going to allow you to then pay with your device, I guess. Being able to, we want to get to the point where you can walk in, buy a coffee, tap with your phone, and then walk out. And it should be that simple. And know that you've used Dogecoin on layer one for all of that. That if we can get to that point, then I can go and buy buy my cannoli. What was it, 15 or 20 an hour? I probably would be a little bit larger if I was buying that much cannoli. But and I guess that's the dream. Any thoughts on that?
I just want to say that while Giga Wallet is what Tim is focusing on, and I'm going to be part of that as well. There are other groups working on POS, and I don't know if the other ones working on them are layer 1 or 2, but I know that there is a group that consists of Bluezer and Lola and RDX, and they are working on a payment channel that may help with that as well. Mm-hmm. So just want to say that there's a lot of that happening in the space, and we know we need that. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's going to be a few conclusions to that and a few alternatives that people can use to implement that.
I think that's a super important point, Michi. I think a lot of people look at the Dogecoin and say, well, what is Dogecoin? Is it the wallet? Is it the core project? Or is it the broader ecosystem? And I think that we need to start realizing that if Dogecoin is going to be the currency of the people on Earth and maybe Mars, it needs to be more than one project. We need to have an ecosystem of projects supported by open source contributions, supported by commercial startups, all sorts of things, because it takes all of that to take over the world, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, also,
Sorry. No, go ahead. I'm just getting a bunch of stuff in Discord. People. Okay, go ahead.
please don't DM my hosts. I'm trying to use them for stuff. I mean, also, I mean, I was basically just going to say, I just sort of pad and then move on to the next question. Is that the right time? I mean, I think, yeah, the answer is there's lots and lots of these things going on. There are lots of challenges. It's very exciting there are multiple projects. I think that's a really important thing to have out there. Like, let's try lots of different things. Let's have different groups trying different things. I think that's crucial to this.
I think a really good idea as well, maybe we can chat with all the folk who are working on the new version of the Dogecoin website, would be to have a list of those projects so that people can find out what's going on. I think that's really critical. So, if you're working on a Dogecoin project, let us know, and we'll try and we'll point you to the people.
Signal boost it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
Cool. Shall we move on to the next person? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So
the other POS.
Yeah, the other POS. That sounds wrong. Proof of stake. He says, just already seeing the chaos. I can't even see the window, and I just feel the chaos becoming. But yes.
Yeah, I know.
Let me have a look. So it looks like the question is already in front of. So we've got Spose to Zoo. Hope I'm not pronouncing that too badly. States that a lot of people believe that proof of stake can tend towards centralization and are very skeptical about the security of proof of stake systems. Tim and Mitchie, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, Tim, do you want to start on that, or do you want me to? Because I can.
I think talking about the security of it's probably certainly in your bailiwick, and I don't want to steal that from you. I mean, I guess I would come in and talk more about why I think that this is an important move. And I guess just to reiterate, and we've said this in the trail map that we put out there, that we're not dictating anything here. We're talking about a proposal, and I think having a proposal, having more than one proposal. But I think that everyone can see the writing on the wall for proof of work, and I know that there are going to be detractors here, but I'm unapologetic. I mean, almost every week I'm hearing about another country closing down mining and making it illegal. I think Russia's coming up next. Like they've flagged that they're about to ban mining, and so. I think that it's real low-hanging fruit if you're a politician and you're being grilled on why your country's not green enough to turn around and say, oh, well, we'll just ban crypto mining, right? Because literally none of your constituents are going to be upset at you. Most of them don't even know what it is. They just, it's the boogeyman. You go, oh, crypto mining, it's using all the world's resources. So I think that there's that. I think that we're fighting against, you're fighting against politicians who are looking to look green, and that's a pretty low effort way of achieving that. And we're seeing that right now. Whether or not that the entire world ends up with that sort of legislation, I don't know. But it's certainly a risk, and I think it would be remiss of the Dogecoin community to just ignore that and say, oh, well, let's just hope for the best. So let's have some proposals. Let's look at some of the alternatives, and I think that's really important that we do that. Maybe throw that the more specific question on security and centralization of that over to you, Mishi.
As far as centralization goes, we have to not compare real to theoretical and theoretical to real as far as proof of work and proof of stake goes. Theoretically, yes, proof of work can be more distributed than proof of stake tends to be. But our reality right now of proof of work, and I say this over and over again too, is yes, we have some miners in the audience, people who have a few ant miners and they're making some good profit from it, and they're doing validation for the network and they're helping the network. And these are guys running a few in their garage, maybe even 50 ant miners in their garage, or 50, something else in their garage or shed or whatever. Those are still majorly small potatoes. as difficulty on a network goes up, proof of work tends to centralize itself more because of the heavy lifting required to make any significant, and I hate to say it, but profit. Low-cost electricity is not ubiquitous. High amperage electricity that people can have access to is not ubiquitous. And it's a very small subsection of lucky, fortunate, normal people who can access mining. And I absolutely understand that there are some rags to riches stories. I know that there are some very much normal, everyday people who have been able to quit their job because they started mining and bootstrap themselves from one miner to a bunch. But you do not hold a candle to the 8-story warehouses with dedicated, 18,000 volt connections and their own on-site, on-premises step-down transformers and giant HVAC systems, and some of them being located in Siberia and stuff because it's already cold there. And that's going to increase depending on like what I guess would be the equivalent, the ASIC equivalent of Moore's law to keep up with difficulty is a risky bet. 5 years ago, not that long ago, 5 years ago, I could turn on my 9 grid seed orbs and hook them up to a couple of laptop power supplies and make a decent amount of Dogecoin. Now, those are only good for heating up my room. That's the only thing that I would possibly turn them on for. And while there are people who have their operations right now, on the timescale we're looking at for implementing something like proof of stake, the whole scene is going to change.
Yeah.
And it's going to become less accessible to normal people. And it's going to continue to become consolidated in giant warehouses and giant corporate operations. And any one of those can fold overnight. Any one of those can merge with another one. They can be taken over by corporate interests and stuff like that. So I think that the security of proof of work is more theoretical than actual. And going over to the way that we're hoping to suggest implementing proof of stake is that it's kind of the way that unions would work in workplaces, giving community groups power and sway as if they were larger players by banding together people with a common interest and allowing them to operate pools for proof of stake. So, everybody's worried about this, like, oh, well, Ethereum has a 32 or 35 entry in order to be able to stake. We're trying to find a way to mitigate that by allowing interest groups community groups to stake together. And it's kind of like how you have financial organizations like M1 Finance where you can buy a tenth of a share in Amazon. I can't afford an Amazon share right now. But, I can send $10 a week in to M1 and eventually build up to a share. I know Share Builder used to exist for that, but they went away. As far as large banking institutions buying up all the stake, I think that would also be mitigated by community organizations if they were large enough. You still have, small community banks and stuff like that now, because there are people who want to bank locally and they want to give back to their community. So I do think that there is at least a possibility that would replicate itself. It isn't a guarantee, and we're not saying that this is the solution, but we do have to have another path as proof of work becomes less appealing globally. And it's not like it's going to be... Sorry, I'm talking too much. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, there's quite a few things I wanted to add to that. Like, I think one of the big things is, like, everyone panics it's going to be, like, next week or something. And it's very much, we're going to come up with a proposal at some point. I don't even know quite when the proposal will come out right now. I mean, to me at least, I very much want that someone running an Antminer or a small farm of Antminers in their garage can be saving the Doge that they're getting, and then use that as their seed for their proof of stake mine. I think that's that's the idea. We don't want to see anyone who's contributing already to suffer from this move. So we're telling people lots of time in advance, like, hey, if you keep the Doge you're getting, you'll get more Doge. That's great. And I think also that the concern about someone buying lots of Doge to stake it, I think that's also true for the equipment. Like, if you have a bank with insane amounts of money to throw at it, they can just buy equipment. All we're doing is changing what you're buying, and we're reducing the e-waste as a result of it. And I think I think people will see that as a positive.
Yeah, and I think there's another concern that people seem to have raised is that we're just going to be using Ethereum's proof of stake implementation, which isn't the case at all. Vitalik has certainly offered, his expertise. He's invited us to Amsterdam, I think, for the Ethereum convention there, and to share their experiences, so that we're not starting from ground zero. I'm really looking forward to talking to some of the Ethereum folk about what went wrong. What did you not expect to be a problem that was a problem, and this is going to feed into that proposal. Not that we're going to be just copying Ethereum. I think that we just need to take that right off the table right now. This is going to be a very Dogely implementation of proof of stake.
I would say, like, the top priority in implementing this is that normal people can do it. This is not going to be geared towards rich people.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that you talked about earlier is how do you avoid big banks and things, claiming all the stake. I think is we want to incentivize people by, Mishi sort of alluded to it, that these pools, which would operate, in my mind, they'd operate on layer one as some sort of configuration that you would share around, or you'd click on it on someone's website. So you could go to, say, like a Lost Dogs home or something like that, and maybe they've got a pool, and you click on that, you put it in your client, and now you're staking into the Lost Dogs pool. And the rules of that pool are that 10% of the earnings go to that charity. Now, the beauty of that is now all of a sudden there are different charitable causes all around the world, all with their own staking pools. And I think that the smaller person, the person who has not a large corporate entity, the person who has a soul in here goes, hey, I really like that cause. I want to stake with the American Cancer Foundation or the Lost Dogs home in India, that CB's been talking about starting up or something like that. And that in and of itself means that the community has control about that distribution. Because you're not just making a cold, callous decision about, hey, well, who's going to give me the most return for my profit? You're actually, return for my investment. I mean, that's part of your equation, because you do want a return for your investment. If I'm staking 100 Doge into a pool, I want to know that I'm going to get, maybe 90 or 80% of that's going back to the people who've staked. But, I'm going to pick selectively. I'm going to go, or maybe I say, hey, I'm going to take half of my Doge and stake it with this charity because I really think I really care about that. That's an issue for me. Like, we've recently just seen the Dogecoin Foundation team up with Mr. Beast and pull a whole bunch of trash out of the ocean, like Team Seas. You may have seen that.
It also makes it. I just wanted to add, Tim, that this also makes it very appealing to NGOs and charities to look at Dogecoin as a way to crowdfund their charities.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. The idea that you've got an NGO that has a pool that you can stake into. Now you're making some money, they're making some money. It's all fantastic. And that's gonna help with that distribution, right? Like that it's not all gonna get sucked up by one or two groups or one or two pools. I think that's really important. And I guess, sorry, one more point that I was just about to make, because, Mishi, you just reminded me of that. I think that it is fantastic for the adoption of Dogecoin if these NGOs are dependent, like they're using Dogecoin to fund their different, the things that they're doing in the world. Because once NGOs of those, that caliber, like, Worldwide Fund for Nature and things like that, are using Dogecoin to fund their whatever it is that they're doing, you have a much higher barrier for governments to just come in and go, we're banning crypto, or we're going to ban Dogecoin because we don't like it anymore. Because, or do you really hate fuzzy animals? Like you just want to like.
Yes, yeah. I just do. I'm sorry. No.
Okay.
My parents were killed by tribbles. What can I say?
I think we've done that topic to death. Is there another question?
Actually, no. I have a point. Sorry, I'm going to keep going. You can't escape from this one.
Whatever.
Pulling you back into this. No, because I was actually going to say one last thing on proof of stake, though. I think people are going, "Oh, it's super experimental, new." And I did actually, in preparation for this, I went and looked it up. And Peercoin, the first proof of stake, came out in 2012. Like, there's a decade of research into this. Like, we're not taking the Peercoin model. We know the Peercoin model seems to work, but like there's a decade of iteration and improvement and thinking about it and going, what about this model? What about that? Like a lot of what we're talking about, I think delegated proof of stake is very much kind of is heading that way anyway. So I think there's lots of things we can learn from that Peercoin skipped on, and I think there's so much sort of to go.
I still have a Peercoin wallet.
Wow, I once.
Yeah, I do.
I once tried and couldn't figure it out.
Oh, okay, Ross. But yeah, I have a Peercoin wallet still.
Do we want to move to the next question? I know we've got about 10 minutes left. Do we do one more question?
Oh, I thought we
go
were
for
going
it.
Okay, whatever.
We're doing an hour and a half. I thought it was now.
I don't know. I don't want to make that if people didn't expect it.
Well, let's check in
People
now.
might be sick of hearing from us. Let's just keep going. Hit us with another question.
So Doge Spread asks, how can people without much coding experience help with the development of Dogecoin? Are there ways beyond the development that people can pitch in to assist?
Yes, lots. Lots. One thing that we've been really trying to ramp up on is translations. So if you speak a language that isn't English, please jump in on the website and even on core localization. We want there's no such thing as too many. Let's make it in more languages than Wikipedia. Let's start doing that. There's even stuff like artwork that you can contribute, whether it's for the site or if you think there's a place where if you're an artist and you think there's a place where your stuff could pop up, suggest it, please. Of course, evangelism is a big part of it too. Telling people, defend when you defend Dogecoin against FUD, that is contributing, in my opinion, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and when you're out there battling that's one time that I don't have to post to combat it.
I think there's a super important point to make there about the Dogepedia, which is coming out with the new fresh release of the Dogecoin website pretty soon. That is going to be a FUD destroying resource, and that is something.
And you can add to that.
Yeah,
everybody can add to that. So it'll be like Wikipedia, and you'll be able to write and submit articles, just pretty much the same way that we do the website now. Is you submit a PR and. If you want to write an article about Dogecoin, please do it. So yeah, there's a lot of ways and a lot of ways coming up that if you're not a coder, you can add to it. So
cool. Very excited for all of that, and I think maybe we should sort of see if we can get an article out in a few weeks' time and go write that up and give people links. I think that would be really useful as well. I say volunteering other people to do work. Sorry, everyone. You don't know where I live, right? Next question.
All right, I'll read this one out because
okay.
this is for Ross. Gaz asks, where does Ross source his top hats and sundry finery? I'd like to see the sundry finery. It just looks like a straight button-up shirt.
Yeah, I was going to say that I'm confused. My shirts aren't that nice. So the top hats are Christie's of London. I would point out I did not.
Wow.
Well, I did not pay list price for this one. I can't. I think it was like a display model, which was still a lot of money, but at least not as much as. Oh my gosh.
It's fancy, right?
Yeah, the shirts, I'll be honest, they're kind of TK Maxx. Because you get, I mean, it's a little bit weird, but you get some really good deals. And then also, I love going into TK Maxx and going, oh, this thing is insane. I need it in my wardrobe. And then later I look at it and go, why did I buy a velvet Hawaiian style print shirt? Like, so if anyone needs someone to bring an insane wardrobe to an event, please let me know. I need therapy. Or internet.
Yeah. I actually do want to talk a little bit about, was it Life's a Game 777 who said, Dogecoin doesn't seem to have a white paper. Is there any plans to remedy this issue? So I have opinions on that, and everybody can disagree as well. Bitcoin had a white paper, and it outlined the absolutely foundational functionality of how Bitcoin worked. That being, it introduced the concept of a ledger and a blockchain and the way that the blocks related to each other. Since then, at least a little bit further on into blockchain time, into crypto history, a bunch of new coins came out. And we're not talking Litecoin, and Dogecoin is contemporary to coins like Litecoin. And they all started with, here's our white paper, because they were emulating what Satoshi did. And some of them had vastly different concepts, some of them didn't. Some of them just had a white paper because, quote unquote, that's what you do when you introduce a coin. We actually predate that fad. And we mostly operate technically off of what Bitcoin has already introduced. Now, culturally and socially we're different, but when people say white paper, they're not really looking for a cultural and social assessment. So I think with the trail map, we kind of went more towards a hybrid of a roadmap and a white paper, which are the two documents that everybody who sees a quote-unquote ICO happen, that's what they want to see, is the when white paper, when trail map. But like Litecoin, I don't think ever had a white paper, because it didn't need to, and it predated that tradition, and we did too. So we've been around since 2014. And we never really thought we needed to have a white paper because we weren't fundamentally changing the technicals. We were, it was a joke to begin with. I have strong opinions on that as well, that it is no longer a joke, but it does contain a joke. It contains a joke, but it is not a joke.
We're no longer joking.
Gotta remember that.
Yes. And I think,
we're still joking. We're still joking.
What?
But sometimes we're not. So, basically, again, it contains a joke, but it isn't wholly a joke. But a white paper, I don't really see as being anything but redundant. We could go over the same things that Bitcoin did and then add what we do with dog on it. Or, we want people to tip each other and be nice to each other and stuff. But that's not what people are looking for in a white paper. So I think really the trail map and how that evolves, which it will continue to evolve, is what people should look at for a surrogate as far as where the white paper would be.
Yeah, I was actually about to say exactly that. Like the one time that I've seen people ask for a white paper, and not just they feel they should have one, but it's actually been, sometimes you get exchanges asking for one if they want to list us. I say want to list us. They often say, if you pay us X, we'll list you. And we're a little bit, what? Like, who paid for Bitcoin?
Yeah.
But some of them do ask at a white paper, and what they want to know is what's your model? What's your regulatory position? But then, to me, the sort of the trail map establishes that it shows why we're not a security, that's very important, because there's lots of things, if we were a security, we'd behave differently, and a whole bunch of stuff that happens. But I think between the trail map and to some ways Dogepedia, I think that's kind of combines into the two. Our white paper is a launch pad for those two, but now we have more instead. Could we go back and write a white paper? Sure. Is that valuable? I'm implying no.
I think it's a waste of time. People can absolutely, though, disagree and contribute to a white paper. Just putting that out there too.
Well, that was the previous question. How can someone contribute? Well, if you want to jump in and write a white paper with Dogecoin, be our guest.
I mean, I will say some poor guy did actually write one once, and I think it just sort of got a bit stuck in editing hell, and I don't know how.
Yeah, I think that was. I believe that was Duckio, wasn't it? Duck, or I think he wrote that.
Yeah, I don't know if we can find a copy of that. Someone could try actually turning into something we're happy with, or not. Not us personally, but the community is happy with. Because I think it was the thing is, we had a bit of a too many chefs problem potentially.
It was designed by committee. So.
Yeah, and it needed a balance of maybe 2 or 3 people reviewing it, and that's the other thing. You could someone could jump in, and as long as they're contributing usefully, help assess that rather than just being one person's view, but also not 3 million people's view, please.
Yeah.
Why though asks, will there be a Dogecoin logo update? That's interesting. I mean, it's not too heavy. I mean, I wouldn't say that the world depends on it too much. There was actually a modernized logo introduced a few years ago, and it was really soundly rejected. People really didn't like it. It was very slick, and made things look very pro. But I don't think people wanted that. Right now, the issue is that the logo, as it stands, was created by a person who we believe doesn't really want to have anything to do with it anymore. So there's been some issues as far as that goes, and reuse of it, and contacting that person for permission to use it. So
and specifically,
again, we go back to the contributory thing, right? If an artist wants to contribute a new logo or something like that.
I'm just going to say, so what I need to emphasize is that's specifically about elsewhere, and I think we should probably move on from that. But yeah, no, it is kind of, I think having a logo that we know we can use on merch would be positive. But yeah, we need to move on. So the next question is from Jaggy, who says, what's it like being a Dogecoin dev? I'm curious what's it like working on it, but also what's it like dealing with the public or people and moderating things?
We talked a little bit about that already. I know that people probably saw that I was pretty exasperated today on Reddit, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that or anything or pretend that it didn't happen. So it can be very frustrating because you have a lot of conflicting opinions out there, and Dogecoin means a whole lot of different things to different people, and they're very disparate. And aligning those and trying to get along with everybody, and trying to make everybody happy is a fool's errand, and it's never going to happen. The only thing that you can do is just understand that people understand it differently, and I mentioned this before. So it's because before the big public rise of attention to Dogecoin, it wasn't really that bad, except for the fact that we were never taken seriously, which was just sort of a kind of a little kick in the butt. But now it's there's a lot of impassioned people out there, and they come from different backgrounds, and they're in Dogecoin for different reasons. So it can be very hard navigating that peacefully, and it can get discouraging. I'll say that. And what I do wish there was more positivity and less negativity, and realizing that I want to put an appeal out that the devs and the people working with Dogecoin and the various groups working with Dogecoin, they're made up of humans, and we are not idealistic, perfect people. We are not the ideal of we're not going to do it right all the time the first time, right? And we all have our flaws and our difficulties. So I just would implore that people realize that there are people behind the screen.
And I think
That's what I would ask for.
I think we also need people to think about what does what do they want, because I think there's a lot of sort of an impulse immediate thing, and it's kind of okay, but what happens then, or quite ideological things like I'm at risk. Okay, I know some people are kind of code as law, and why are you interacting with the legal stuff? And I'm kind of going, well, we have to. That it doesn't cease to exist. And I think it's one of these very significant growing pains of Dogecoin in that, like it. I was looking back at the prices actually in 2016, and like the crazy amount that it has grown from like an infinitesimal amount below a cent to being I don't know. I'm terrified to look at the price and find out is it up or down during this talk. But it is
serve as a price quote.
it has gone up like 3, 4, 5 orders of magnitude. It's crazy, and there's such a different thing to when we started. And I think we need to get people to go, here is a constructive path forwards, not don't tell us what's wrong, tell us what's right, tell us what's good. Don't tell us I don't like that, tell me I want that thing. Because when you tell us I want that thing, that's so much more useful for us. Like, we all want a path forwards, we all want to do something good. We are doing our very best here. We're not perfect, we're learning as we go along. But,
say what you would like, not what you hate.
Yeah.
And I know that's kind of nodding to the thing that Elon said, and I don't want to, simp for Elon at all. I mean, he's been a great supporter, but it's not all about that relationship whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Billy said it too, and I think Billy said it in a couple of ways, separate from Elon, that you should support what you like, and not just take down what you hate. And I will say that building is a lot harder to do than destroying. You can make an impact, a large impact, by breaking something a lot easier than you can by building something. And really, it people should try to say, I'd rather it be this way than I don't like how it is, or I don't like how it's going.
Yeah.
So please, yeah.
And that's really the beauty of the distributed nature of open source development, is that anyone can make a proposal. You don't even need to be a developer. If you can get enough people behind you, then you could fund development if you were so passionate about that. But produce something, contribute, and then you have a voice. People who are just interested in tearing things down, I don't think get a voice.
Yeah, and I think we have to say, like, I don't think that be constructive. Let's build a thing. So very much. It's actually something also a bit weird to say in the middle of an AMA, but I think a really good meta point about why are we doing this AMA is, like, we know that there are tens of thousands of questions out there, and if we try addressing each of them individually, I could easily run a team of, a small company of people doing nothing but answering questions all day and not get through all the questions out there. We have to find a way to bring that down to a usable load. And I know that some questions do not get answered as fast as people would like, but sometimes we have to go away and research a question and go, here are the very specific answers, or that is still being considered, or all sorts of things that people don't...
Some things are still in process.
Yeah, or just, make sure we are answering correctly and carefully, particularly, when people ask a lot of very, very detailed questions. It's kind of, well, we need to make sure we get exactly the right details, that we can't just go, it's a bit like this. Like, if you ask exact details, we have to go away and spend a lot of time researching and coming up with those answers. I think
we're probably just agreeing with that, and reiterating that getting the questions from the chat today, adding them to that list, and also I think, was it King Taze on the Dogecoin Discord server is facilitating gathering those questions. So jump in there, jump on the Discord server, and ask those questions. I think we've already mentioned that we're going to be doing this again in I don't know how many weeks. We'll pick a date, right? And hopefully turn this into a regular thing, and start rotating different people in and out, and you'll hear different voices from the community. So That's probably a really good way of getting answers to the questions that you have.
Yeah. So I'm just, getting some feedback from sort of the moderators, because I know there are a lot of questions that we haven't tackled today, and I think what I would say on that is, like, we do hear you. We are preparing answers. It is being worked on. We're not ignoring anyone. Please be patient with us. Please understand that we need to get this right.
Stuff isn't final. Stuff is not final yet, and we can't go and make an announcement about something that isn't final because, then details changed and we're like, oh, well, you guys said it on the AMA. Well, okay.
And I think this is exactly the thing, is like when we try to do something quickly, we get told, why did you rush it? And it's kind of, well, we try to do it slowly, and you say, why aren't you doing this faster? It's kind of, we're working on it. We are a small team. There's a lot of operational setup. Sorry.
Were there any...
There will be more AMAs.
Yes, I think we are...
This is not the last.
I don't know if we've got a committed schedule. I think we're talking about... I know we are talking about doing more. Have we got an intended schedule? Does anyone know?
Every 6 weeks sounds pretty good to me.
Cool.
I think 2 months is too long. And every month, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, because in my head I was going...
Gotta get some dev work done, right?
Every month? Yeah. So I think that's it. I think, we're going to try targeting an AMA every 6 weeks. I'm not going to say it's exactly 6 weeks. If it's 5, if it's 7, don't please, don't, please be patient with me. But yeah, right. Shall we wrap it up there?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Cool. Thanks everyone. Thanks to Tim and Mitchy. Oh, at the beginning we didn't do a quick introduction. Slight oversight on our part. So just going around the room, we have Mitchy, who is principal engineer, and he's an engineering principal engineer. We have Tim, who is product lead. I say forget anyone's titles, and myself, who I don't think I have a title. The guy in the top hat.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, thanks so much for both of you to coming and joining me tonight. Thanks to everyone for all the questions. Thanks to King Taze for organising this. Thanks to Jens and Richard for doing the moderation. Again, I know there's lots of questions we haven't answered. That is literally going to my next task, is saying, right, where are these answers? So that's on my list. Thanks everyone. Have a great evening and stay wow. Goodbye. How do I stop this? I actually don't know. Okay,
Get off your computer.
We are now off.